Hello, I'm James MacGregor. I'm the president of the ACEDS UK Chapter, and I'm joined by two people, Jim Vint and Bryant Isbell, and I'm going to turn it over to each of them in turn to introduce themselves. Jim, why don't you go first?
James, thank you. Thanks for having me today. I have had a 20-year career in data risk management involving eDiscovery, cybersecurity, data privacy, and due diligence. I'm the former lead of the data and technology business at two global consulting firms, and I'm the co-founder of Breakwater Solutions Group.
And Bryant, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, James. So I am Bryant Isbell. I'm the managing director and the global head of the eDiscovery and data advisory practice at Baker McKenzie. I'm also a member of the UK board of directors for ACEDS. And I have been in the eDiscovery and legal technology space for just over 20 years, based in law firms mainly, and focused on anti-corruption, compliance, litigation, investigations, etc.
Great, thank you both for joining today. So today's discussion is going to focus on eDiscovery tools, professionals, and processes, and how we can apply those skills and technologies outside of the litigation sphere. So, Bryant, I'm going to start with you. Why do you think that eDiscovery tools and professionals are well equipped to service legal problems that fall outside of litigation?
Yeah, thanks very much, James. I mean, I think the first thing I would highlight is that I think that the eDiscovery, arena or area, space, if you will, has really been a hotbed for legal technology innovation. The reality is that we have had to, for many years, be able to handle large volumes of data, collect, process, host, review, and analyze this information. And so the technologies in the eDiscovery space have really improved over the years, have really grown over the years. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of technologies in other parts of the legal space, legal technology space, including, due diligence tools, technologies being used in the transactional space, are really being born out of what we've learned in the eDiscovery space in terms of the increased focus and use of analytics and machine learning. And so for those reasons, I think that these tools have a lot of application in the transactional space, in the due diligence space, and the skill set that the eDiscovery professionals bring to bear can really make a major impact in this area.
Jim, when it comes to applying these tools and processes in a transaction, is there anything that can be done pre-transaction, or is it actually after the deal is done that it's beneficial to use these types of technologies?
So two things. I'll maybe go back real quick to something Bryant just said with regards to the skill set of the professionals to leverage this technology. I think the skills that the eDiscovery professionals, at least the ones that I've been exposed to throughout my career, the skills that they have around process and the diligence of reviewing, finding, and extracting relevance from large data sets that comes through the use of these tools is dead on point for what's required, either pre-due diligence to the extent it's capable, which we'll get to in a second to your second question, but certainly post-acquisition. I think those skills and those technologies become more relevant. So I've been through the transition process, both as a participant during a transaction, as well as an advisor to both law firms and corporations going through acquisition. And typically prior to the conclusion or the completion of the deal, most of the data is not open for review. So because of time constraints, because of the process, there's typically summary data for the top 20 clients, the top performers, key contracts. It's really not a robust or holistic review of the entire environment. However, post-acquisition, that large-scale data volume certainly opens itself up to more detailed review and ultimately introduces the need for and a mandate for leveraging technology and skills that eDiscovery professionals have.
And Bryant, when it comes to pre-acquisition, is it true that the strategies that you put in place and what you uncover in those early stages might then focus the work you do post-acquisition and what you can gather from the richer data set?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, to Jim's point, the access to information at the pre-acquisition stage is going to be limited. Once the deal is done, and once you've acquired the target company, the ability to get access to all of that information, is then completely open to you. I think what then happens is that what you've learned from the pre-acquisition due diligence work is that there may be areas that you want to focus on first, whether it be remediation of an issue that that you've acquired, whether it be some strategic direction that you want to take, a piece of the business that you've acquired. But that the work that you've done in the pre-acquisition stage is definitely going to help direct what you do post-acquisition. And I think that the experiences and the work that eDiscovery professionals are already doing is very much applicable to that kind of work, because the reality is we're already handling investigations. You're already handling litigation. You're already identifying, preserving, and collecting data, in the context of those kinds of activities. And so once you have access, to the universe of documents for that company that you've just acquired, then you're going to be taking those same skill sets and applying, the same processes and procedures to, analyzing that information and deciding what you need to do, whether it be through remediation, whether it be investigation, and then of course there's sort of follow-on work, right? Like, helping the company to, organize, data mapping exercises, for example, understanding privacy compliance in different jurisdictions in which they operate, and understanding what the landscape, of the infrastructure looks like. So there's lots of, sort of follow-on activities that I think will come, from that sort of post-acquisition integration, work.
Yeah, and I guess actually to follow that, and sorry, Jim, I'll come back to you in a second, but I guess to follow that one step further, do you think there's opportunity such that when a business has merged and recognizes that it wants to divest certain segments which are no longer applicable, those same tools and processes used in the eDiscovery sphere are helpful for people trying to cleanse data which is no longer relevant to their business?
I do. I mean, I'm sure Jim has thoughts on this, but I absolutely do. And I think that the reality of these tools is that it allows you to analyze and get to the universe of documents as fast as possible. And I think it's both from, we typically think about things in an inclusionary way. I want to get to this universe and analyze it. But you can also use the tools to do exclusionary searching, right? I want to get to this stuff and get it out. And so I absolutely do think that the tools will make a huge impact in those areas. But Jim, thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, no, I was going to say too. So I think this plays right into my comment, Bryant, on the back of your last commentary is, M&A or acquisition provides an inflection point, much like, migration to the cloud from on-prem solutions that organizations are going through now. And the process through which this more proactive data governance, information governance, data management process and policy review, they always say, oh, there's no great time to have a baby, but quite frankly, when you do, it's great. And so this provides one of the inflection points to holistically review the new co's position on carve-outs, on processes, on data minimization, reducing duplication, and really helps them get proactive compliance in order. Maybe you don't have massive liabilities that you've acquired that you need to review. Maybe the due diligence comes out pretty well. However, there's always an opportunity to reduce the future risk around that data post-integration. And I think that the eDiscovery professionals and the tools that have been developed in this space are primed to aid in that assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, I think, we're already seeing a big uptick in clients being much more interested in proactive information governance work, whether it be, taking a proactive approach to putting in the policies and procedures, whether it be litigation and investigations, readiness planning, data privacy compliance, right? I mean, I think that the cybersecurity landscape, the privacy landscape, these are real pressure points for companies. Potential fines and exposure for the business means that they really do have to have their ducks in a row. They really have to be ready in case there is that triggering event, or if there is that issue that they have to investigate. And so that upfront investment, and to Jim's point, doing it at the time of the acquisition and having your house in order means that when that event that you hope never happens, you're ready to act quickly.
Yeah, because the recreation of that information 4 or 5 years down the road, loss of institutional knowledge, cloudiness around the business decisions of why certain things were or were not migrated or destroyed or not held back, that's a lot harder to explain and recreate. And it introduces a whole raft of issues around spoliation and intentional deletion. So documentation at the time of a transaction, Brian, to your point, is way easier in defending claims when they do arise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Final question to you both. So as you mentioned, Brian, at the beginning, the eDiscovery industry has been doing this with data sets for some 20 plus years. And yet, until now, we've not had much success as a profession breaking into the due diligence space. Whereas alternatively, we've seen companies like Luminance, traditionally deal tools, move into the eDiscovery space. Why do you both think that until now, eDiscovery hasn't made a play more the transactional work?
Jim, why don't you go first?
I was going to say, I think maybe two things. One, I think eDiscovery firms till recently have had their hands full in kind of developing the tools to address the inundation of data. I think there's been a significant market opportunity to continue to capitalize in that space. And two, I think the advancements that Bryant has mentioned over the past few years make these tools a lot more relevant outside of just plain eDiscovery as we move forward. And you've seen the offsprings of other contract management tools that drive off of the foundation of AI and machine learning within traditional review tools and processing engines. So I think there's been kind of a dual shift of the ability of the technology to work in different spaces and the advancement of technology to address issues outside of eDiscovery.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Jim. And I'll just add sort of two other thoughts that I have around why I think. I think that transactional lawyers have a different mindset than what I will call contentious and advisory lawyers, right? So litigators. They're laser focused on getting that deal done because they've got to get this deal pushed through the closing. And so that's their laser focus. And I think that they're, doing it the traditional way has, been done for such a long time that for them, it's just easier to push through and get there. I also think that, to one of Jim's earlier points, access to information pre-acquisition is limited. And so because of that, I think there's less data to get your hands on and sort of leverage the tools. Now, I think that the increased focus around compliance across multiple areas, data privacy, cybersecurity, et cetera, have really shifted the way that people are thinking about M&A work as well. Because the reality is, there is an increased focus around compliance. The risks are high. And so I also think that we're starting to see a greater interest around utilizing these types of technologies to make an impact, because of the need for companies to have their house in order. I'm not saying that companies didn't care about it previously. Absolutely they did. And absolutely companies cared about information governance, but it wasn't something that they really wanted to spend a whole lot of money on. But now when you're seeing, for example, the GDPR, where the potential fines can be as much as, keep me honest, I think it's 5% of global turnover.
Mhm.
That's the maximum fine that you could get. That is going to make a company stand up or perk up and think, I really have to be serious here. And so they are willing to invest more time and more money into getting it right.
And Brian, I also think we're seeing a change along the same lines. We're seeing a change in the approach by private equity in understanding that risk as well, which is also driving trends in the acquisition and M&A space, because private equity, the deal values are being impacted based on certain provisions that are made for cybersecurity, anything that may come out in post due diligence. We're seeing a change in that focus. And so I think that's also helping drive the overall landscape of transactional due diligence.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you both. I think that's a very positive outlook for the eDiscovery community then in that case. Hopefully there's a ton more work in this space for us all to pick up. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, James.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.